smarter to be on SportsGrid.
Happy Friday. Good morning. Welcome to NewsWire on SportsGrid. Craig Mish back here with you as we get ready for the big weekend ahead. Of course, Major League Baseball has started spring training games. A lot more today in both the Cactus League and Grapefruit League. We'll get to that in just a second. We've got Jim Gazzali from Legal Sports Report on the latest in horse betting and some other stories as well that we're covering. Also, Matt Latovsky weighs in from Sporting News on the latest and Major League Baseball as well. So thanks for being part of our show here on this Friday. Don't forget, we're here every Monday through Friday, 11 a.m. to 12 p.m. Eastern, right here exclusively on SportsGrid, covering sports news, sports wagering, and the business that surrounds it as well. Let's get started with our top story of the day. The Kansas City Chiefs have a new punter. His name is Matt Araiza. If his name sounds familiar, he was dismissed from a lawsuit that alleged a 17-year-old girl was raped while he was at San Diego State University in October 2021. He was previously with the Buffalo Bills. He was let go, but an agreement was reached with the woman, and the Chiefs have signed him. So he is back in the NFL and potentially will play for them next season. Now, still remains to be seen. A lot of things to unpack here. But regardless, he's getting a second opportunity to play in the NFL, and it is indeed potentially with the Kansas City Chiefs if he makes a team out of camp. We will see. And the preseason, of course, the NFL still to be determined. Ways away here in August and September. Okay, now, in terms of this big story, Adam Kaplan, of course, our SportsGrid NFL insider, was on with Scott Farrell yesterday. And since this involves the champions of the National Football League, Scott Farrell and Adam Kaplan had a chance to discuss what this potentially means for the Chiefs.
But the Chiefs signed him today, and the Steelers let him slip through their fingers.
Yeah, I'm told on your Steelers, they had interest in him. They did not offer a contract that I'm told. But, yeah, the Chiefs did their homework on him. By the way, Araiza was there in Kansas City today with his agency, and he signed his one-year deal. And what's interesting here is they didn't work him out. Now, they knew that he had been working out since the Bills cut him, and he was ready to roll here. There was actually another team, I'm told. There are actually 3 AFC teams involved. In terms of interest, but it was the Chiefs that offered him the deal. He signed it. Now, their punter, Tommy Townsend, had been their punter for 4 years, is unsigned. But the bottom line is, with Araiza's gift of being able to kick the football, one of the best punters in college football history, you could be rest assured, unless he has a very bad training camp, he'll be their punter at least for the season.
The Bills washed their hands of him in a hurry. I think it made them look foolish when he got found not guilty of anything.
Scott, what they could have done is they could have had him inactive until some information came out. They could just have him inactive every week, just like the Texans did. Remember with Deshaun Watson? They had him inactive. They could have done that. No, you're absolutely right. They didn't stand by him. Other teams, including the Chiefs, Steelers, and others, did their homework on him, and they were comfortable enough with the information they gathered that they could go forward. But it was the Chiefs. They were the only team to offer him a deal, and now they've got a young punter. And Tommy Townsend, again, as you mentioned, was a guy that they were with for 4 years and won more than one Super Bowl with him. But he is unsigned now. Fully expect Araiza to win that job, by the way, whether they re-sign Townsend or bring in another veteran.
All right, Scott Farrell, Coast to Coast, yesterday, and we'll be back on the air today at 3 o'clock Eastern. Let's get to the latest in spring training. We've got some news, notes, and information. The Dodgers yesterday in the spring training opener. A lot of players you may not have heard of, but regardless, they go on top of the Padres early. They win by a final of 14-1. Austin Nola has signed a one-year deal with the Kansas City Royals. It is a minor league deal. Wyatt Langford is starting in the Rangers spring training opener, the number 6 prospect in baseball. He was the 4th pick overall just last year. And Juan Soto is going to make his spring debut for the New York Yankees coming up on Sunday. Now, in NCAA news, the Gators played the Crimson Tide the other day, and it was a great game. Game went to overtime. I was watching some of that. But there was a fight in the game as well, and the Southeastern Conference has decided to suspend their forward, Muhammad Wagwe, for 1 game as a result of the elbow that he gave to Alex Condon in the back of the head of the Gators in their win. LSU has fined $100,000 after storming the court after their victory over 17 Kentucky. Terrell Ward's basket as time expired gave LSU that win over the Wildcats. Iowa loses again in women's college basketball. What a weird season for them. Indiana upset them yesterday, 86-69, although Caitlin Clark did her part. She had 24 points. And with the news that EA Sports is bringing back college football 25, athletes can now start opting into their game. It is part of the NIL name and likeness process. Over in the NBA, the Detroit Pistons having a tough year, going to be a little bit tougher for the next 3 games. Isaiah Stewart has been suspended due to his altercation before the game against the Phoenix Suns with Drew Eubanks, and charges have been dismissed, but he's going to be off the court for probably about a week. A judge will not dismiss a lawsuit against former NBA player and Defensive Player of the Year Dwight Howard. This is from lawyers to dismiss a lawsuit that alleges a sexual assault and battery back in 2023. They're going to hear the case. Nikola Jokic has only been in the NBA for a handful of years, but he's the 4th player in NBA history to record a triple-double against every team that he's played. How incredible is that? 10 for 10 from the floor. The Nuggets beat the Wizards last night, 130-110. It was the 16th triple-double of Jokic this season. Also, LeBron James looks like he will be back tonight, facing off against Victor Wembanyama and the San Antonio Spurs. In other NFL news, Geno Smith's contract has been restructured, so whether they keep him or trade him still remains to be seen, but he's more affordable against the cap for the Seahawks coming into the 2024 season. Antonio Brown, he's at it again. This time he says that on social media he is going to sue himself for $10 million. I would love to expand the story, but then I'd be lying because I'm really not interested. You can look it up yourself. Golden Knights captain Mark Stone could be out for an extended period of time due to an upper body injury. Unfortunately, got hurt during Nashville's loss. And over in UFC, Gervonta Davis and Frank Martin have agreed to a very big fight in the spring and early summer for the WBA lightweight title. Also, one other note in baseball, former member of the Milwaukee Brewers, Miami Marlins, Brian Anderson signs a non-roster invitation. He will play with the Seattle Mariners this spring. So that's the very latest going on in spring training, in baseball, in basketball, in college hoops as well. But naturally, the interesting part of baseball is here we are approaching the month of March, and still the Boris 4, the Scott Boris clients, still remain unsigned. So we're going to hit on that. Coming up next, we've got Matt Latovsky joining us, courtesy of Sporting News. Then we've got Jim Ghazali from Legal Sports Report, and we'll close the show out, of course, with more discussion here on the show as we got Coach Young in the house. A ton of games tonight on the Friday NBA slate. So stay on the grid for that and a whole lot more. And as a reminder, for those of you into fantasy sports and fantasy baseball, normally myself and Davis Maddock give you a preview every Saturday morning. Tomorrow, it is myself and George Kurtz. We're taking care of the Central in the American and National League. So make sure you join us on that show. That will be tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. Eastern right here on SportsGrid. So let's take a quick time out. Coming up next, where do the remaining free agents sign that are still out there? We'll see if we can uncover that question with Matt Latovsky from the Sporting News. He's been working all night on the story. We'll have a quick look.
Johnny's a 19-point lead late in the opening half, only to squander that lead. Hall ball under Shaheen Holloway coming all the way back.
All these guards start jacking up shots, and then Chioriano doesn't get the ball. Hey, Rick, how about stop throwing your kids under the bus and get your big man the ball, your best player, play inside out like you were doing earlier in the game, and you probably would have won.
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
This is going to fall 6, 7, or 8, right? This is going to fall 6, 7, or 8. 6 you lose, 7 you push, 8 you win. So it's going to come down to the end.
And he missed the 3, and they are not going to foul. They're not going to foul. He just drove and scored, though. Oh, they gave up a dunk with 14.1 to go.
In-game live, prime time, only on SportsGrid.
Your gut says Miami is going to win, and you should take the over. Your gut also said your NFT selfies would only go up in value. They didn't. But your head is on SportsGrid and knows the QB is in concussion protocol. The backup has a 45 QBR against the zone coverage. The New York D has the most sacks in the league. So yeah, trust your head. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
It felt during the year that there was a little bit of disconnect with Wilks and Kyle Shanahan. The total points allowed by Steve Wilks' defense the last 3 years before this, head coach for the Cardinals, they gave up the 26th most points. Defensive coordinator for the Browns, 20th most points. And then Carolina, they gave up the 19th most points.
Pharrell Coast to Coast, only on SportsGrid.
Anyone that's been to a sporting event, the atmosphere before a game, I think Game Time Decisions has that same exact atmosphere. This is our arena. This is what we do. There is going to be an energy to Game Time Decisions that you will feel night in and night out. The excitement you get when you lock your bets in, when you're figuring out what you want to do, we can zone in on the biggest games each night. I want this to be the place that people come to before the games start so they feel as ready as possible to lock in their cards. We are going to hit every single one of those markets that you need to know about. We're going to go through every single thing, and I've got a great team behind me that's going to help me get the job done. There is not going to be a better place, I promise you, than Game Time Decisions to get that new information, react to it, and be able to then bet accordingly. We will have everything at our disposal, and we will use that to our advantage. I'm Kevin Walsh. Tune into Game Time Decisions from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern on SportsGrid.
Welcome back to NewsWire here on SportsGrid. Well, I don't suppose there's any truth to the rumor that Blake Snell and Cody Bellinger and Jordan Montgomery and Matt Chapman haven't signed because they don't want to put on these new jerseys. I'm not going to speculate that. Let's bring in Matt Latovsky to see if we can dive a little bit deeper into the reason why there's this little cloud over Florida and Arizona in spring training. Matt, the weather is fantastic here in Florida, in Arizona as well. We got spring training games starting. It sure would be nice to get like everybody signed, and we're closing in on it, but there's still a handful of pretty significant names out there.
Yeah, this type of thing usually happens to some degree every year, but 4 key guys like that just all hanging out and waiting to figure out what team they're going to go to. Yeah, I don't exactly know why it's taken this long for all of them. It's one thing for one of them, maybe even 2, but all of them. It's a little surprising, but as we approach March here, you got to figure we're going to start seeing some of these signings soon.
Yeah, I mean, for the pitchers especially. I mean, for the first 2 we're going to talk about here. I mean, they really can do their bullpens inside, but there's nothing like facing live hitters in action. And while it doesn't have to be today, it kind of has to be soon. Like by next week, I think these guys have to be facing some live hitters and making like 1 or 2 spring training starts. Blake Snell was a Cy Young Award winner. He's like coaching Little League Baseball or travel baseball, Matt, right now. And it's very rare to have this situation going on. And it does feel a little bit, with Snell in particular, like the Bryce Harper situation from several years ago where he was waiting and Manny Machado was waiting. I mean, this is an elite player in the game, maybe a little bit different than some of the other prototypical aces who go 8 innings and, complete games. I mean, it doesn't happen with Snell. But he is going to have a huge impact on some team whenever he does sign.
Yeah, you got to think so. And I always wonder with pitchers, you talk about being ready for the start of the season, which I think as fans we think about a lot, but you wonder how much the pitchers are like, well, if I push it back a little bit, that won't be the worst thing in the world. And it's all about, a type player like that's going to go to a really good team. So they're worried more about the stretch run. They're worried more about the postseason. So if he has a little bit of a delayed start to the season, I don't think they necessarily hate that. So that's where it gets interesting. Fan desire and team desire might be a little bit different sometimes in these cases. But yeah, nonetheless, you still want the guy on your team. You want to know what your rotation is going to be going into the season, and you want to know who slots in where for sure.
Yeah. Well, a year ago, we never would have predicted one of the premier names that's out there, Matt, would have been Jordan Montgomery. I mean, certainly a good pitcher. Let's not get it twisted here. He's a good pitcher, but to have the season that he did with Texas in the postseason has really put him in the crosshairs as well. And again, going to get probably a significant contract to pitch for someone this season. Sure seems like a natural fit with the Rangers doing like nothing this offseason for him to just go back there. I know that he is actually in South Florida pitching and working out, getting ready to get going. Maybe he signs with a Florida team. Who knows? I'm just throwing it out there. I don't think Montgomery's going to get what Snell gets. I mean, that's obvious, but he should do very well for himself as once it ends up happening.
Yeah, I think so too. And it's funny. I just constantly, I don't know, maybe it's because of the people I follow or the way the algorithm's set up. I just constantly see Red Sox fans. Get us Jordan Montgomery. Just get Jordan Montgomery. Sign him, get it over with. And, especially after some of the comments that were made earlier this week by some of their offensive players about, hey, we need pitching. And I think everyone knows what they need. But at the same time, what does Jordan Montgomery do at the end of the day? You're in a behemoth of a division, and you probably have the worst team as it is. So it's real interesting. You talk about where he's going to sign. Obviously, almost every team in baseball needs pitching. There's very few teams that just think, oh, we're fine. But you factor in the contract, and that certainly changes the equation. But yeah, I mean, I'd like to see him go back to the Rangers. It just fits. I always like to see guys on championship teams come back, run it back, and see if we can do it again. But there's no shortage of options. But clearly the asking price is a little high right now. So it'll be really interesting to see where that balances out, how the length of the deal and how long he winds up signing for, because he's a very good pitcher, like you said, and everyone needs that. And it's just kind of getting weird at this point that it's still dragging into February and possibly into March here.
Yeah, it definitely is. Now, the easiest fit I thought of all was Cody Bellinger going back to the Cubs. And I mean, it certainly feels like, Matt, inevitably it's going to happen. It's like these two teams, it's like Bellinger and the club are just like staring at each other right now, waiting for someone to break. The Cubs have basically waited this out as long as they have. Bellinger has waited this out as long as he have. I think the biggest upset, if we were to predict amongst these players that are left, would be Bellinger going somewhere else, right? Like, I don't think he's going to do another 1-year deal with the Cubs. But for some reason, they've just not been able to get this done.
Yeah, that's like you said, that's a weird one where I keep going, well, what's the holdup? Why aren't we just doing this? And I got to think it's the years, kind of what you alluded to there, because, he bounced back. He had a nice little year there. And you think, okay, let's get this figured out. This is a pretty good team. This is a team that it makes sense. And for whatever reason, just hasn't happened yet. And there's been, I think a lot of speculation where else he could go. And it's really tough to predict that one, because I thought it was just going to happen and we'd all be moving on with our lives, especially at this point in the spring. But it hasn't yet. So I don't know where those other big suitors are. I don't exactly know if there's mystery teams and this and that, but seems to be the running theme with some of these guys. What's the holdup, and can we just make this happen?
Hopefully soon. All right, so the next two players are in a little bit of a pickle, I think, here. Now, Matt Chapman's a really good player, but at this point, some teams are filling up their rosters, and needless to say, he wasn't an incredible. I mean, he's a great defender, probably the best defender at his position in the American League last year. But at this point, Matt, like, he is the one for me that, like, I can't speak to this, but if I'm him, like, get me on a team, like he may go to me, Matt, go the route of Bellinger did last year, do your 1-year deal and then go back out on the market. Like, that I could see happening. I know he probably has got to be disappointed thinking the Giants or some other team was going to give him a long-term deal. I mean, everyone thinks that the Bellinger situation is very similar to Chapman. Everyone thinks he's going to be on San Francisco. It's just a matter of time.
Yeah, no, that's how I always felt too. And I think you're right. Multi-years would have been great, but after you hit the way Matt Chapman hit last year, it might be 1-year prove-it deal time. And you never know sometimes with these guys what they view. I think fans love to talk about, oh, the park, that's a bad hitter's park, good hit. I think that the guys are just like, you know what, I'll go there, I'll hit, I'm good enough, I'll make it work. But on a 1-year prove-it deal, that might not be the optimal place to go. But obviously, if you go, you have a good year, you play great defense, like you said, and the team wins, then that's going to do more for you than 5 extra homers at maybe a quote-unquote better hitter's park. So, I don't think the options are as plentiful for him as maybe some of the other guys we mentioned. But if it is down to a 1-year deal, then all of a sudden the market opens up a bit, and who knows what team then is looking for him. And infield defense, fans don't necessarily emphasize that as much when they talk about a team. We tend to look at lineups, we tend to look at rotations, but infield defense is important. Of course it is. And for a guy like that, he can have an impact on any team, especially a team with a lot of ground ball pitchers. So he'll be an interesting one to watch over the next couple of weeks too. But like you said, I do think it'll probably be a 1-year prove-it deal at this point, maybe with an option. Yeah. But I think his options are drying up a little bit.
Yeah, and JD Martinez is the final one. He's not part of the long-term solution for anyone, but he had a great year last year with the Dodgers. They, of course, filled his spot with Shohei Ohtani. He's been down this road before, Matt. He was a free agent, one of those long free agents back a couple of years ago. He was waiting till March. He'll end up signing with someone for 1 year. I'm not really worried about him. I think he'll be okay, but it's just going to be a different kind of deal.
Yeah, agree completely. The old 1-year deal for him, and he'll go and he'll hit some homers, and then we'll go, yeah, that was JD Martinez year, and we might be back here again next year.
Probably so. All right, Matt, thanks for coming on the show.
All right, thank you.
All right, we'll be right back.
Johnny's a 19-point lead late in the opening half, only to squander that lead. Hall ball under Shaheen Holloway coming all the way back.
All these guards start jacking up shots, and then Soriano doesn't get the ball. Hey, Rick, how about stop throwing your kids under the bus and get your big man the ball, your best player, play inside out like you were doing earlier in the game, and you probably would have won.
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
This is going to fall 6, 7, or 8, right? This is going to fall 6, 7, or 8. 6 you lose, 7 you push, 8 you win. So it's going to come down to the end.
And he missed the 3, and they are not going to foul. They're not going to foul. He just drove and scored, though. Oh, they gave up a dunk with 14.1 to go.
In-game live, prime time, only on SportsGrid.
Your gut says Miami is going to win, and you should take the over. Your gut also said your NFT selfies would only go up in value. They didn't. But your head is on SportsGrid and knows the QB is in concussion protocol. The backup has a 45 QBR against the zone coverage. The New York D has the most sacks in the league. So yeah, trust your head. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
It felt during the year that there was a little bit of disconnect with Wilks and Kyle Shanahan. The total points allowed by Steve Wilks' defense the last 3 years before this, head coach for the Cardinals, they gave up the 26th most points, defensive coordinator for the Browns, 20th most points, and then Carolina, they gave up the 19th most points.
Pharrell Coast to Coast, only on SportsGrid.
Anyone that's been to a sporting event, the atmosphere before a game, I think Game Time Decisions has that same exact atmosphere. This is our arena. This is what we do. There is going to be an energy to Game Time Decisions that you will feel night in and night out. The excitement you get when you lock your bets in, when you're figuring out what you want to do, we can zone in on the biggest games each night. I want this to be the place that people come to before the game starts so they feel as ready as possible to lock in their cards. We are going to hit every single one of those markets that you need to know about. We're going to go through every single thing, and I've got a great team behind me that's going to help me get the job done. There is not going to be a better place, I promise you, than Game Time Decisions to get that new information, react to it, and be able to then bet accordingly. We will have everything at our disposal, and we will use that to our advantage. I'm Kevin Walsh. Tune into Game Time Decisions from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern on SportsGrid.
Welcome back to NewsWire here on this Friday. Today we've got Jim Ghazali from Legal Sports Report. We're going to go over the latest on sports betting numbers in New Jersey, also revenue from ESPN Bet, some data starting to come in there. So stick around for the next 10 minutes or so. We got Jim in the house. Jim, great to have you back here on Friday on NewsWire. I know that you're getting ready here. I mean, Kentucky Derby, man, like this is not that far away, right? Like all of a sudden March comes, then April, and it's like, we're all in on the Derby. Not too far for you.
Yeah, right over the horizon. I guess I think there's 75 days, 76 days, but who's counting?
Yeah, well, we'll need you that week. We'll need some picks that week too. Don't forget to come back on the show that week and early on in the week, Jim. Don't hit me here on Friday. By that time, I know what I'm going to do. Okay, so speaking of which, maybe there'll be fixed horse betting odds in Kentucky one day. Not fixed horse racing. I want to be clear on this. Fixed odds on the races here. Now, this is happening where? Which state? Are they getting ready to do this? And for those people who are not familiar, let me reset this whole conversation. If you bet on horses, you make your bet. The horse is 6-1, 5-1, 10-1. That may not be the odds that you get when the race goes off. So I just want to say that once again here on the show. Horse racing is not like betting on FanDuel or DraftKings or anything else. But the new way of betting potentially on horse racing is going to be happening in specific states. So, Jim, now the floor is yours, now that I have given people that explanation.
Yeah, you're right in that explanation. Fixed odds just went live in Colorado earlier this week. It's the first state where they have fixed odds horse betting inside a licensed sports book. Bet365 is the operator in Colorado that is spearheading the fixed odds horse betting initiative, if you will, in Colorado, and it launched earlier this week. Now, to your point, Craig, with fixed odds, it's much like placing a sports bet, right? You have those odds, and when you make that bet, you lock in that price, so to speak. In a pari-mutuel system, like with almost everywhere else with horse racing in the U.S., those odds can fluctuate as money comes into the pool. And as we've seen over the last couple of years with these computer wagering groups that are able to bet large sums of money at the last possible moment before the race starts, and it has these wild fluctuations of odds, and because of a variety of factors, you don't really see what final price you're going to get on a horse until, they might be halfway down the backstretch after the race has already started. So certainly kind of navigating some complaints from horse players. And Colorado is the first state, like I said, to have fixed odds horse betting inside a licensed sports book. Now, important to note, too, that fixed odds horse betting is also legal in New Jersey. However, they do have a standalone app in New Jersey that is specific for fixed odds horse betting. You won't find fixed odds horse betting in New Jersey on any of the sports books. So in Colorado, it's in the Bet365 app, mostly a large spread of international tracks. And the content provider that I was speaking to that's going to be providing all of the races, she told me that the idea was to have 24/7 action, which is true. Also, there's plenty of regulatory hurdles that need to be cleared in various markets around the U.S. to be able to offer more domestic tracks. Just 2 domestic tracks currently being offered for fixed odds in Colorado. Both of those tracks are in Louisiana, Delta Downs and Evangeline Downs. Probably, if we're being honest, somewhere down on the second or third tier of quality of racing. But we're getting into the season for the Kentucky Derby, which, of course, we won't see fixed odds betting for the Derby or any of the Triple Crown races. But we do have a variety of pretty marquee international events on the horizon. You have the Saudi Cup, in Saudi Arabia this weekend, and then the next couple of weeks you have the Dubai World Cup. So I'll be interested to see how Colorado performs with some of those international events, and then of course, what sort of domestic play we get as Bet365 has fixed odds horse betting now in Colorado.
All right. Well, thanks for the update on Colorado. Now let's get to the update on New Jersey. Hundreds of millions of dollars coming across here as far as sports betting finances and numbers and revenue is concerned. And I guess I shouldn't be surprised to see this incredible number that included parlay bets, Jim. It just seems like it's not the wave of the future. It's like the wave of the now. Everybody is doing these parlays.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. A huge revenue month, a huge handle month too in New Jersey in January, and those parlays seem to be driving the bottom line for a lot of operators. And we've joked about it together here, Craig. When are the bettors going to learn that the parlay is not the most advantageous wager for the bankroll? But it was a record-setting month in terms of revenue and handle in New Jersey. $1.72 billion in betting in New Jersey, fifth straight month of $1 billion or more. And we've talked about this too, Craig, going back to the fall, where we've really seen the New Jersey market regain its footing after the New York market launched. And, you would presume took a lot of those New Jerseyans crossing or New Yorkers crossing the border into New Jersey to place their bets before that New York market legalized. So good for New Jersey, really. They've had a nice little stretch here where they have regained their footing and have grown quite a bit in recent months. Fifth straight month, like I said, over $1 billion. Sportsbooks, they made $170.8 million in January, largely due to those parlay bets. That was a new monthly revenue record in New Jersey. And the one standout, I will say is FanDuel again, and they have that underneath that Meadowlands racetrack license, FanDuel, PointsBet, and Superbook. Those three all combined for over $109 million in monthly revenue, a new monthly revenue high for any group of operators in New Jersey. And obviously that one is certainly dominated there by FanDuel. And again, that New Jersey market showing some strong signs. New York doing well as in addition to that, and Pennsylvania showing some strength as well. So, those three markets all kind of bordering each other, seemingly a rising tide of sports betting in that Northeast, kind of lifting those three states simultaneously, it seems.
All right, let's close it out with Pennsylvania and ESPN Bet starting to get some numbers in how they did in the winter. And I wonder, Jim, is this an impressive number that they have 9% as is being reported of the market share? Is that where they want to be? I can imagine that maybe a year ago that would have been okay, but as we move forward, don't they have to have a bigger handle of the revenue?
Yeah, I guess, there's a couple of different ways you can kind of look at it. That 9% that they have in overall online handle in Pennsylvania for January, and they grabbed 9% online share in Michigan as well. Those are two of their top states. What we've seen in the other markets where ESPN Bet is live, they tend to be in that 6 or 7% range. Now, we never got an exact percentage of what Penn and ESPN had agreed to, where that ESPN Bet market share needs to be for that deal and arrangement to continue long term. But the speculation was always in that 8, 9, perhaps even upwards of 10% range. So Pennsylvania, Michigan, two of their more positive, trending states in terms of that 9% share of online handle. What we talked about last week, Craig, we did see the Maryland promotional spend from ESPN Bet drop off significantly. We saw the same in Pennsylvania and Michigan, and it seemingly did not affect their market share in any such way. So that would be a positive sign for Penn and ESPN Bet as a whole. $1.9 million in promotional spend in Pennsylvania in January. That was down from $8 million in December. Michigan, right around $2 million, down from $10 million in December. So we have seen that trend of kind of pulling back and reining in that promotional spending. Penn CEO Jay Snowden said recently that they gave out more promotions in that first month and a half there from November to the end of the year, mid-November to the end of the year, than they were expecting. So just seemingly a natural sort of progression in that promotional spend. And there'll be a couple of other states that release their figures here in the next couple of days and weeks. And I imagine we'll start to see more of the same of that pulling back on the promotional spend. And we'll see where their online share of handle lies, but like I said, typically in that 6, 7, 8, 9% range so far in the first couple of months.
Yeah, and getting out of the red is certainly the important part of this, but stopping your promotional spends, I don't know if those two things are correlated, but clearly if they stop doing the promotional spend, that is not a guarantee that all of a sudden they're going to get out of the red because of that, because they don't have the promotions going. So we'll keep an eye on ESPN Bet. Thanks again, Jim, for coming on the show. Really appreciate it, and we'll talk again soon.
Thanks, Craig.
All right, Jim Ghazali with us. We'll be back right after this.
Johnny's a 19-point lead late in the opening half, only to squander that lead. Hall ball under Shaheen Holloway coming all the way back.
All these guards start jacking up shots, and then Soriano doesn't get the ball. Hey, Rick, how about stop throwing your kids under the bus and get your big man the ball, your best player, play inside out like you were doing earlier in the game, and you probably would have won.
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
This is going to fall 6, 7, or 8, right? This is going to fall 6, 7, or 8. 6 you lose, 7 you push, 8 you win. So it's going to come down to the end.
And he missed the 3, and they are not going to foul. They're not going to foul. He just drove and scored, though. Oh, they gave up a dunk with 14.1 to go.
In-game live, prime time, only on SportsGrid.
Your gut says Miami is going to win, and you should take the over. Your gut also said your NFT selfies would only go up in value. They didn't. But your head is on SportsGrid and knows the QB is in concussion protocol. The backup has a 45 QBR against the zone coverage. The New York D has the most sacks in the league. So yeah, trust your head. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
It felt during the year that there was a little bit of disconnect with Wilks and Kyle Shanahan. The total points allowed by Steve Wilks' defense the last 3 years before this, head coach for the Cardinals, they gave up the 26th most points. Defensive coordinator for the Browns, 20th most points. And then Carolina, they gave up the 19th most points.
Pharrell Coast to Coast, only on SportsGrid.
Anyone that's been to a sporting event, the atmosphere before a game, I think Game Time Decisions has that same exact atmosphere. This is our arena. This is what we do. There is going to be an energy to Game Time Decisions that you will feel night in and night out. The excitement you get when you lock your bets in, when you're figuring out what you want to do, we can zone in on the biggest games each night. I want this to be the place that people come to before the games start so they feel as ready as possible to lock in their cards. We are going to hit every single one of those markets that you need to know about. We're going to go through every single thing, and I've got a great team behind me that's going to help me get the job done. There is not going to be a better place, I promise you, than Game Time Decisions to get that new information, react to it, and be able to then bet accordingly. We will have everything at our disposal, and we will use that to our advantage. I'm Kevin Walsh. Tune into Game Time Decisions from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern on SportsGrid.
Welcome back to NewsWire here on SportsGrid. We've got a preview of a couple of games in the NBA tonight. We'll also review them with Coach Young, who's coming up too. We'll see if he agrees with Ben. Bucks and Timberwolves, huge game on the slate tonight, as well as the Cleveland Cavaliers among the favorites to win the East. Cleveland, really? At Philadelphia tonight. Here's Ben with a preview.
Craig, night number 2 back from the All-Star break around the association. In the home stretch of this NBA season, let's take a look at some of the marquee matchups on this Friday evening in the NBA. A really good interconference matchup gets us going in the Twin Cities. It's the Minnesota Timberwolves, who emerge out of the All-Star break with a 39-16 record. That's the best mark in all of the Western Conference. The T-Wolves begin this stretch run as that number 1 team out west and a 4.5-point favorite against the most tumultuous team of this NBA season so far, the Milwaukee Bucks. The Bucks a 4.5-point underdog. Craig, this will be just the 7th time this season for Milwaukee booked as a dog, and they have been atrocious when getting points throughout this season. 0-6 straight up. Just 1-5 against the number, not covering by an average margin of more than 12 points per game. So if Milwaukee is the underdog, there is often a reason. The over-under, 224.5. Meanwhile, Minnesota, best record in the Western Conference out of the All-Star break, 39-16, booked as a favorite 42 times this year, 21-19-2 against the spread. First game out of the All-Star break for both of these teams, where, Craig, the Bucks are in a tumultuous position for sure, but still 14 games above 500, third best record in the Eastern Conference, just 3-7 under Doc Rivers, under in 9 of those 10 games, with Glenn Doc Rivers on the sidelines as the head coach. Now to two teams that played last night and suffered a loss in the first game following the All-Star break. Back in Philly, the 76ers, a 4-point home underdog, over under 229 and a hook against Donovan Mitchell, maybe in the Cleveland Cavaliers. The reason I say that, Craig, first game for the Cavs last night against the Orlando Magic at home. Spida was not out there. The Cavs lose outright as a 5.5-point home favorite against the best cover team in the league in Orlando. Now a 4-point number in favor of Cleveland on the road in the city of brotherly love, where Philly was a night ago, booked as a very slight home favorite against the Knicks. They lost by 14. Without Joel Embiid now, Craig, for 11 games in a 13-game stretch on either side of the All-Star break, the 76ers have lost 10 of their last 13 contests. A Friday night around the association, Craig. Enjoy the weekend.
Thanks very much, Ben. And we'll get back with Ben on Monday morning. Right now, we're going to get with Coach Young. He's in the house. You see him all over SportsGrid talking college basketball, pro basketball. And we're going to dive into some of those topics that Ben just gave us. And, Coach, great to have you back here on NewsWire on this Friday. And the NBA back last night. And I know we got some great matchups coming this weekend.
Yeah, the NBA is back after their week off for the All-Star break. A bunch of games last night, intriguing matchups. Some teams on back-to-backs, and then college basketball. You know how it is, Craig. We're at the end of February, so conference play, a bunch of big-time games in college basketball this weekend.
Yeah, no question. All right, so look, life without Joel Embiid is not going well for the 76ers. And the Cavs are certainly one of the teams to beat, I think, in the East at this point. To see Cleveland favored at Philadelphia at this stage of the season, by the way, with Embiid or not, is sort of stunning. The total is 228 in this game. All the credit going the way of the Cavs at this point. And I guess I would ask you, Coach, like, can Philly get it going here at all without Embiid in the lineup?
Well, if you look at it, Craig, this team is literally treading water, and they're treading water just to get themselves to the playoffs here. We'll see if Joel Embiid comes back, but you saw last night, without Joel Embiid, everybody's got to move up in rank in regards to dependability. You know, Tyrese Maxey becomes that number 1 guy. Tobias Harris becomes that number 2 guy. And that Philadelphia team that really is struggling without their identity, folks. And that's no Joel Embiid. It's a big matchup tonight. Remember, folks, the reason why you have Cleveland, the favorite is Donovan Mitchell. If you look at props, They are out showing Donovan Mitchell to play. So that is why you're seeing Cleveland as a 3.5. I've seen now 4.5 point favorite on the road. A team that, listen, throw out last night without Mitchell. They've played really good basketball as of late. I know people worry about back-to-backs. Both teams were on a back-to-back. And if you look at Tyrese Maxey, he played 40 minutes last night. So a lot of wear and tear on him. I do like Cleveland minus the points on the road with Spider. I think they rebound nicely tonight.
Okay, fair enough. Now let's move on to one of the best teams in the NBA this season, the Minnesota Timberwolves. Another team we'll be watching in the playoffs this year. Total is 225 in their game against the Milwaukee Bucks. Coach, I feel like the Bucks have been a really tough team to call against the spread this season. Like, they're better than they are on paper, but against the spread, they've just been rough. Like, you don't know which team is going to show up. They could blow a team out by 30, and then they could lose. Maybe that's the story of the whole NBA, but I feel like the Bucks in particular. But look, they're really good. I could see them going to Minnesota and winning easily tonight. But for me, they've been a hard team to predict this year.
They've been really hard to predict, and obviously Ben went through some of the really important traits with Milwaukee, particularly how they are as underdogs. Right, folks, here's what it comes down to: the number's 3-7, and that is the record of the Milwaukee Bucks as Doc Rivers as the head coach. They have one of the toughest strength of schedules left the rest of the way. In fact, number 2 overall in the NBA, only followed by Phoenix, which I think we'll talk about as well. So with them, they have to really start playing well, Craig. If you really think about it, I like their win total to go over. I think it was 50.5 coming out of the All-Star break. I think they're going to go over that mark. Doc he really does value the regular season. And what team right now really has more pressure on them than Milwaukee? You make the trade for Damian Lillard, right? You bring in Terry Stotts as an assistant. You get rid of Terry Stotts after Dame Time shows up. You have Adrian Griffin at 30-13. You fire him to bring in Doc Rivers. So now the pressure's on Milwaukee. This is a big spot. I do like Milwaukee plus the points. And you're right, Craig. I would be shocked if they went into Minnesota and won the game outright. For me, as a road dog, you just take the points. Give me Milwaukee plus the points on the road.
Yeah, plus 142 on the money line tonight. All right, the Heat taking on the New Orleans Pelicans. Speaking of a team that's been up and down, that is the definition of the Miami Heat this season. Pelicans, again, 3.5 point favorites. Total is 220. Jimmy Butler's always the story with the Heat. When Jimmy Butler plays, and he plays at a high level, Coach, the Heat generally win, regardless of what Bam does, right? Like, that's kind of the situation with the Heat. It all rides on Jimmy. Maybe it's not even fair to him at this point in his career to have that happen. But that definitely is the story tonight. And with the Pelicans being the favorite like they are, it sort of tells me they're not counting on Jimmy Butler to have a big game tonight.
Well, if you look at it, Jimmy Butler didn't miss time because of a death in his family. And it looks like, in looking at the injury report out right now at 11:30 Eastern Standard Time, which the NBA, remember, folks, the NBA posts their injury reports every hour on the 30. So you can go look right now, 11:30. He's not listed on any injury report. So looks like he may be a go tonight. And for me, this gets really tricky, Craig, because, there's a thought process of how do you handle, right, dealing with the play-in tournament. Like, if you look at right now, a New Orleans Pelicans team that's only one game out of being in the play-in tournament, with them with 22 losses, Dallas, Phoenix, Sacramento, all with 23. But then you got to look at Miami, folks, who is tied with Indiana and Orlando. They got to get going. You don't want to be part of the play-in tournament, folks. I'm sorry. I don't care what anybody says. It's way too risky. It's way too much drama. This is an intriguing matchup. To me, I like Spo. And I just think this is when he's got to get going. I know Jimmy Butler ebbs and flows. He's back tonight. I like the Heat plus the points. I think this is another game. I'll take the points. Won't be shocked if they win outright.
All right, plus 132, as Coach talked about, on the money line for the Heat if you go that route. Phoenix at Houston tonight. Let's close it out here. The Suns are 4-point favorites. 233.5 is the total there. Suns are a good basketball team. I don't know that they're a great basketball team. Can they win by this margin tonight?
They should win by this margin tonight, Craig. I mean, if you look at this team in Houston, Houston did such a phenomenal job, right, earlier this year. They were covering games like crazy. They were playing extremely well. This is a spot now where I think you got to get Phoenix going because think about what I just said. It's about losses and the fact that you want to stay out of the play-in tournament. So I think this is a big game for a team in Phoenix that lost last night. They did not play well. We'll see what happens. Injury reports have not come back out. We'll see if Bradley Beal comes back out there. But do know this is a big spot for a Phoenix team that's got to get going here. They have the toughest schedule the rest of the way of the NBA, and they need wins, folks, and they need them any chance they get. I do like Phoenix minus the points of rebound tonight after a rough performance, a little bit better shooting out of KD. We'll see what happens with Beal. Wait a little bit closer to tip off and see if Bradley Beal plays tonight.
All right, that's an important note there, no question. All right, so let's go to the NBA championship odds, as the Celtics are still the favorites to win the NBA championship at plus 230. But here we go. Denver and the Clippers are hot on their heels as far as the betting market is concerned. The Bucks still pretty much where they've been all season at plus 650. Really, the story here is the Timberwolves. Timberwolves plus 2,300 here, but Coach, they're first place right now in the Western Conference. So I don't know if this is an indictment on the regular season in the NBA. Is it an indictment on the Minnesota Timberwolves? I'm not sure. I mean, I know we're going to be excited to see them in this dance come playoff time, but I mean, do they have a chance to win the championship? Do they have a chance that we can even hedge, like get them to the Western Conference Finals or get them to the finals and hedge at that point? Doesn't seem like the people, at least the betting market's taking them very seriously.
Craig, to be honest with you, it's about matchups, right? It's about matchups and how teams you know the phrase, right? Styles make fights, right? So when you start looking at, folks, the odds to win the NBA championship, or let's say, ready, back up, the odds to even come out of the conference, you have to look at who matches up with who. So right now, if the season ended today, who do they got playing in the second round? It's probably Denver, right? Denver right now is the 4. Then you have New Orleans at the 5. So then you're looking at the fact that if Minnesota and Denver were to play in the Western Conference semifinals, the fact that the Joker absolutely destroys Rudy Gobert, because Rudy Gobert will not come out and play him, that bodes to be a problem. Also, a team in Minnesota that hasn't done it yet. So you're going to see teams get the respect based off of track record and veteran experience. To me, Minnesota, if they stay at that 1 and they got to go through Denver, that's a problem. The only thing worse than that, honestly, Craig, is if they got to the 2 seed and they got to go through maybe the Clippers, maybe Dallas, and Phoenix. I like this Minnesota team. It's a great story, but I can't take them over some of these more experienced teams in the playoffs.
Yeah, it would be a great story if they even got out of the first round, to be honest, with the way the Timberwolves have gone over, I don't know, the last 20 years. Coach, great to have you back here on NewsWire, and have a great weekend.
Thanks, Craig. See you next week.
All right, Coach Young with us here on a Friday, talking some hoops. Now, one of the big stories in baseball going on right now are these new uniforms. Have you seen the jerseys yet? A lot of controversy surrounding them. We actually got a statement from the Players Association on this, so we'll give you that next.
Johnny's a 19-point lead late in the opening half, only to squander that lead. Hall ball under Shaheen Holloway coming all the way back.
All these guards start jacking up shots, and then Soriano doesn't get the ball. Hey, Rick, how about stop throwing your kids under the bus and get your big man the ball, your best player, play inside out like you were doing earlier in the game, and you probably would have won.
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
This is going to fall 6, 7, or 8, right? This is going to fall 6, 7, or 8. 6 you lose, 7 you push, 8 you win. So it's going to come down to the end.
And he missed the 3, and they are not going to foul. They're not going to foul. He just drove and scored, though. Oh, they gave up a dunk with 14.1 to go.
In-game live, prime time, only on SportsGrid.
Your gut says Miami is going to win, and you should take the over. Your gut also said your NFT selfies would only go up in value. They didn't. But your head is on SportsGrid and knows the QB is in concussion protocol. The backup has a 45 QBR against the zone coverage. The New York D has the most sacks in the league. So yeah, trust your head. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
It felt during the year that there was a little bit of disconnect with Wilks and Kyle Shanahan. The total points allowed by Steve Wilks' defense the last 3 years before this, head coach for the Cardinals, they gave up the 26th most points. Defensive coordinator for the Browns, 20th most points. And then Carolina, they gave up the 19th most points.
Pharrell Coast to Coast, only on SportsGrid.
Anyone that's been to a sporting event, the atmosphere before a game, I think Game Time Decisions has that same exact atmosphere. This is our arena. This is what we do. There is going to be an energy to Game Time Decisions that you will feel night in and night out. The excitement you get when you lock your bets in, when you're figuring out what you want to do, we can zone in on the biggest games each night. I want this to be the place that people come to before the games start so they feel as ready as possible to lock in their cards. We are going to hit every single one of those markets that you need to know about. We're going to go through every single thing, and I've got a great team behind me that's going to help me get the job done. There is not going to be a better place, I promise you, than Game Time Decisions to get that new information, react to it, and be able to then bet accordingly. We will have everything at our disposal, and we will use that to our advantage. I'm Kevin Walsh. Tune into Game Time Decisions from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern on SportsGrid.
Welcome back to NewsWire here on SportsGrid. Well, one of the subjects for the early part of spring training in Major League Baseball has been the new jerseys from Fanatics and Nike that we have all seen. I talked about it earlier in the week with the numbers. But now a lot of people are talking about the actual jerseys and the pants. And unfortunately, they've made these pants to the point where they look kind of see-through. I don't know if you've seen this before, but with Picture Day happening yesterday, it may be hard to see on your screen there if you're on a phone, but if you're streaming us from a TV or an iPad or a laptop of some kind, you can kind of see where you can see those, pockets sort of flapping through. You can see a lot of other things too, which we're not going to show here. But Tony Clark, the head of the Players Union, basically said that this is a manufacturer issue and a league issue. So essentially, it seems like, at least for the time being, that the little kicking of the can is going on here. I don't know who is to blame here in the end. But we're going to find out, I'm going to guess, because I don't know that they could wear this stuff, for the season. And opening day is on March 28th. Do they have enough time to get this going? I don't know, but I don't want to see through any jerseys. And I'll be at a spring training game tomorrow as the Marlins and Cardinals open up their spring season. That's where I'll be after Fantasy Sports Today. And I'll see you tomorrow morning on FST as we have more fantasy baseball preview. So can't wait to see you then. Also want to thank Coach Young for coming on our program, in addition to Matt Latovsky and Jim Ghazali. Those were our guests on the show. Thanks to Ben for his little NBA preview video, Michael Cohen, our associate producer, and Sam Yarnell does a great job producing our show as well. That will do it. I'm Craig Mish. Have a great rest of your day. Don't forget, Scott Farrell, 3 o'clock Eastern, coming up. All of the great NBA action, all of the NHL action, and Friday night college basketball, let's be honest, it's the Ivy League. It's not that great, but he'll preview it anyway. And I'll see you tomorrow morning for FST. If not, enjoy your weekend. Be back Monday morning, 11 a.m. Eastern, for our next edition of NewsWire on SportsGrid. So enjoy your day, your night, and I will see you then. Take care.